This is a never-ending saga. Do federal employees have jobs? Do they not have jobs? Are they just emailing people to see if they're alive? I mean, really, imagine waking up on a Saturday and getting an email from your boss's friend. Bear with me, the boss would be Trump, the friend would be Elon Musk, saying, list everything you did last week or get fired. On a Saturday? Talk about ruining your weekend. I'm talking to a veteran that was a government employee and voted for Trump that got fired without even getting a chance to respond to that email. Also, have y'all seen the news in the last few days involving more planes? 2 more planes almost had tarmac collisions in 2 different cities. One American Airlines plane in DC and one Southwest flight in Chicago. What the heck is going on with our airline system? As somebody who travels often, I'm thinking maybe I need to find a new hobby. At this point, hopefully, the former FAA director can help me calm my nerves when I talk to him. All that and more coming up on Echo Chambers Unplugged with me, Lindsey Granger. I'm not gonna lie, if I got an email telling me to list out everything I did last week, midday on a Saturday, while I'm trying to enjoy my weekend with my kid, I would be pissed off. First and foremost, compiling a list of tasks I've accomplished feels like a random errand, like a runaround that would waste more time and money than not doing anything at all. You guys have definitely filled out those employee annual reviews, right? You know those things are not the most effective ways to tell what you've done. Nobody cares, and it's not the best way to highlight your accomplishments. They're glazed over at most by your bosses. I mean, your boss knows exactly what their staff is and what they're not doing. It's not going to be their barometer to tell somebody's alive. But also, if your boss didn't ask for it, but your boss's boss, which would be President Trump, didn't even ask for it, but Elon Musk did, are you definitely going to respond? I mean, listen to what Elon Musk had to say.
I think that email perhaps was best interpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse? We will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly.
And he says, of course, we're going to make mistakes. I mean, these are people's livelihoods we're talking about. It can't be glazed over as a mistake. And then say you had a slow week. Like, is there a referendum on my whole character and my entire career and years of accomplishments because my week had 25 hours instead of 60 like last week? I mean, Elon, you can't be the boss of the entire country without fully understanding what these people do. Some stuff actually requires a deep understanding of what each industry actually does and what's necessary to complete a job. I mean, we're talking about postal workers, correction officers, Department of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Education, Energy, Homeland Security, Housing, Urban Development. It's impossible for Elon Musk or any one man to understand the inner workings of all these jobs in a few days over 5 bullet points. But more importantly, we've been hearing stories of people like Derek Copeland, one of the already 30,000 federal workers who've been given notice to leave their jobs since Elon Musk's DOGE came into effect in January. Derek recently retired after 2 decades of service in the Air Force. He was working at the Department of Agriculture to continue to serve his country. That's when he received a termination letter out of nowhere on February 14th saying, you have not demonstrated that your further employment of this agency would be in the public interest. Derek joins me now, so I'll let him speak for himself. Derek, I want to start by saying I'm sorry that you lost your job, and I really want to talk to you about how you felt that day on February 14th when you received that termination letter.
They basically threw us out like a piece of trash, veterans included. That fork in the road email that was sent out, that, a lot of people say, well, why didn't you just take the fork in the road email? Everybody was given a severance package. That is absolutely false and is not true. That fork in the road email basically gave people the option, right, to either retire, resign, get out. But nowhere in that email did it ever say, hey, if you're on probationary status, I think it'd be in your best interest to take this offer, because if you don't and it expires, we're going to fire you. The way they went about this and the way they're currently going about this is cowardice. I have this letter sitting right in front of me about my termination, and it says the agency finds based on your performance that you have not demonstrated that your further employment at the agency would be in the public interest. If you're going to fire people, have the grit and the gut to actually say why you're firing them. Don't be a coward. Say it to their face. Tell them why you're firing people. And the reason why is because And I'm not saying that this is President Trump in terms of the mismanagement of government, because let's be clear, this thing has been mismanaged for probably since the inception of government, right? But let's be clear and let's not lie. And what this letter does to people is it prevents them from getting unemployment in certain states, because it literally says that your performance basically sucked. And so when an unemployment agency sees that, there's certain rules in certain states, they will not give you unemployment for that. And sure, you have the right to an appeal and you can present certain things to that state. But these are real people suffering right now with families that can't even afford to feed their kids and their families, and I have all my performance reports. I even have letters of recommendations from my supervisor the day that I was fired, basically saying that my work is well above and beyond any standard that they could even set. How is somebody that doesn't meet a performance and not in the best interest of the public, how do I have all this information if this letter says that basically that my work sucks? Matter of fact, in my whole 20-year military career, my performance has never been a question.
One of the reasons why I want to talk to you is because we're in that second round of firings, it feels like. So Elon Musk sent out that message to everyone over the weekend saying, list out the 5 things that you've done or basically get fired, which is more plainly stated than when you were released. Would you have liked the opportunity to list out 5 things? And do you think that that's too much to ask?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's like they're doing things so backwards. Like why all of a sudden in the second round now are they asking 5 things? If that was really something that they wanted to know, they should have asked that a long time ago. I don't think it matters what you put in that email. I really don't think it matters. Who in the heck is going to be in charge of sifting through that, right? And reading that? They've already proven that they're firing people without even knowing what they do. So what makes you really think that they are going to sit there and read through 5 bullet points of what every single federal employee is doing? They ain't doing that. They just want to see a name to a reply so they can put it in a database and said, okay, this person replies. He's at least still living. Whether he's actually working or not, we don't know. But they're hiding behind this disguise of this. And the worst part is they're using, like I said, fear and intimidation. Like, who the hell are you to give Elon Musk to say, I'm going to fire you if you don't reply? Nobody elected you to fire anybody. I applaud the work, and I think it's okay to try to figure out where we can cut and what's wasteful in government, because my tax dollars go there as well. But it's not okay to use fear and intimidation to try to get people to respond to these emails. And let's not forget that not only the president, but the government, they work for us. We didn't elect Elon Musk to any position. The dude obviously has no clue about some of these federal agencies and what they do. For the USDA, we get paid with user fees. We don't get paid with tax dollars. So when the government shuts it down, goes into furlough, guess what? We still go to work and we still get paid. Like, how are cutting us saving taxpayer dollars?
We had a tumultuous election season where people were really trying to decide who they were voting for. There was a lot of chatter on social media. So you ultimately made your decision. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that decision and then also how you're feeling now and how you hold candidates' feet to the fire.
I hate things being made into because these are the comments that are out there. If you voted for President Trump, then you deserve this. I think we should be careful on not having empathy in certain things when we talk about, well, who did you vote for? Because that can be taken way out of context. No matter who you vote for, it's okay to question, even if you did vote for somebody. A question, that's what we should be doing. Like, hey, wait a minute, you said this, and now you're not doing this. Like, okay, let's hold you accountable. I want an answer to that.
What do you say as a veteran who's now struggling, trying to figure out your next step, to people who are pointing fingers and saying you deserve this?
A lot of that stuff, doesn't bother me because, the one thing, as veterans, we're pretty resilient and we do, push forward on things. And I think that's one big mistake. And I'll backtrack this a little bit is that's one big mistake that Elon Musk made, I think, is he I don't think realizes the resolve of the American people and veterans. They taught us how to fight, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous in terms of what they're doing and what they can get away with. So, I'm going to use every outlet that I can to make sure that the American people actually know what's going on. If President Trump sat there at his rallies and said, hey, because what he's doing right now looks a lot like Project 2025, which he repeatedly denied, even knowing it existed, right? But what he's doing looks a lot like that. Something doesn't add up. If he would have sat up there and ran on some of the things that he's doing, I don't think it would have worked out as well for him, and of course, like I said, the border is huge. And I think Biden did a horrible job on it. And I'm glad that he's doing what he's doing. But that, again, like I said, does not give him a free pass to just dismantle things the way that he's doing, because it's not the American way.
If you had an opportunity to talk to President Trump, he could be listening right now, right? This is going to go online on multiple platforms and he'll be able to hear you possibly. Sure. What would you say to him? What would you say to him as somebody who wants to be seen and heard?
I would basically say, hey, you are no different than anybody else. You are accountable to the American people. You're accountable to the military, the veterans, especially as the commander in chief. You sit there and say that you run on transparency, and then in some of the news media sits there and touts you for running on transparency. But guess what? You're not telling the American people. You are not telling the American people about all the things that are being cut that should not be cut, the veterans that should not be cut, the hardworking people that are actually doing things that should not be cut. And like I said, the nation was built on hardworking people and veterans. And right now, he also stated before that he put, veterans above bureaucracy, and that is farthest from the truth. And right now, he's not living up to that promise. And shame on them and shame on the administration.
What kind of conversation are you having with the people that you love the most when you come home, telling them you're not working anymore?
It's tough. And I think, I got a lot of good friends and mentors and this is definitely an emotional time. But one thing I refuse is to let a confirmation bias cloud my judgment on certain things. I really try to see things from all sides. I'm not going to sit up here and say, President Biden was the worst president of all. No, he did some good things. He did some really nice things for veterans, right? He did some horrible things for America as a whole. But I wish more people could be less biased and report just the facts and just what it is. Like, who gives a shit if it's Republican, Democrat, left or right? Report the facts. And where has the empathy gone in Americans, or just to say, you know what? I don't like Joe Biden. I don't support him, but he did some okay things. Or I hate President Trump, but he did some okay things. We don't get that. And it's such a shame. And so when we talk about these conversations, especially with family, I mean, these are conversations not only myself, but everyone's having. Hey, what do we do? How are we going to bring in, certain, how are we going to pay for food, or how are we going to support this? And those are hard conversations to have. And like I said, we have them, you have to have them, but I just don't think that they understand the impact of what they're doing.
Well, Derek Copeland, thank you so much for sharing your story. And most importantly, thank you so much for your service.
No, I appreciate it. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and tell the story in a what hopes to be not a political, not one way and non-judgmental, and a way to explore everything and not just be so one-sided and biased. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity with you.
Is it just me, or does it feel like planes are falling apart left and right? I mean, it's scarier to fly now more than ever before. In recent days, we had 2 near misses at Reagan Airport in DC and Chicago Midway Airport. We even had an American Airlines flight escorted by a fighter jet to a diverted landing in Rome due to a bomb scare. What is going on? There have been nearly 100 aviation accidents in 2025, according to data from the National Transportation Safety Board, after a series of high-profile disasters, including January 29th, Washington, D.C., 67 people were killed. January 31st, Philadelphia, that small medical jet, remember that, carrying a child patient, crashed into a Philadelphia neighborhood. February 6th, Alaska, a small plane carrying 10 people crashed after losing speed and altitude and vanished from the radar. No one survived. February 10th in Arizona, 2 private jets collided. In Scottsdale, February 17th, a Delta plane crashes and flips upside down in Toronto. Luckily, everyone survived. February 19th, 2 single-engine planes collided outside of Arizona. So I reviewed some NTSB data, and it shows a general fall in air accidents in the U.S. from 2005 to 2024. But since the beginning of the year, bad news has been the aviation world name of the game. And it's still early in the year. So if aviation incidents are really happening less than in years past, why does it feel so out of control this year? And how worried should we all be? Well, I want to talk to someone who actually might have the answers more than I do, former FAA Administrator Billy Nolan. Billy, welcome. So Americans are rightfully concerned about how many dramatic aviation incidents have happened. What is causing all of this?
My comment is that we never rest on our record. of the past, and it's been a pretty stellar one, almost 16 years prior to, American Eagle 4352. And prior to that accident, it was 2009 since we had a major commercial aircraft accident with, lots of passengers on board. I think it's always helpful for the audience and certainly for the flying public to put everything into some context, right? So on any given day here in the United States, we have between 45 and 50,000 at the peak days. You get up to about 50,000 commercial flights. 99.99999, way out there, of flights take off and land at their destinations safely around the world every single day, day in, day out. It doesn't mean that we should not, for all of the stakeholders, all of those with responsibility for keeping the public safe, whether that be airlines, whether that be the FAA, whether that be the NTSB, right? We're all stakeholders in this, to include the flying public, right? And so our goal is to say, okay, what happened today? Is there something that we missed? Is there something within our system, number one, that's broken? I would argue there isn't anything in our system that's broken, right?
Are some of these accidents that are happening due to layoffs and lack of staff?
Nope, not at all. I would just say emphatically, I certainly still have a lot of, folks, I led the FAA for, nearly a year and a half, and I know the agency quite well. The FAA has, 45,000 plus employees, of which about almost two-thirds of that man our air traffic control, our airspace, right? I've had conversations with folks at the FAA. If you think about what are those critical safety, air traffic controllers, there were no layoffs there, folks, safety inspectors, those are the folks who oversee the skies, who oversee airlines, who oversee OEMs, the manufacturers. There were no layoffs there. Overarching, when you look at the agency, its safety mission is on track, and they do have the personnel that they need to ensure that for the flying public.
So, Billy, you can confidently say that the FAA is not understaffed. And I ask that because the New York Times reported on January 30th that staffing at the air traffic control tower was not normal in DC when that accident happened. So with staffing shortages being a topic of conversation for a lot of media outlets, it's an ongoing issue at airports nationwide. So how do we solve this problem? And are you telling me that it's not really a big problem?
No, what I'm saying is that you asked first about those employees who do things among this group of probationary people. That's folks who are in their first year or they may be in a new role, but they're in a probationary process. That's something different than someone who's been at the agency a long period of time, right? And working in these what I like to think of as three critical roles. Number one is, again, air traffic controllers who control traffic. Safety inspectors who provide a level of oversight, and then certainly the people who maintain that critical equipment that is critical to, our nation's airspace. So the FAA certainly continues to work on getting controllers.
When you hear the president say that some of the issues that are happening are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, how does that sit with you?
Well, having run the agency, here's what I say, it's a fair point to make that should we look to say how efficient, right? After all, agencies, those are public, those are, dollars coming out of out of taxpayers' pockets. So you want the most, the best bang for the buck. My focus, and I think the focus of every administrator who has sat in that chair, is how well are we running the agency? Does it have the resources? By resources, I mean the funding, I mean the people, and I mean the expertise it needs to ensure, first and foremost, that the flying public is safe, that secondly, that is efficient, and then that this entity, no matter what the agency, has the ability to carry America over the next 30 to 50 years, right? These are not short-term endeavors here.
So when we look at the aviation industry from a bird's eye view, what you're telling me is that it is safe based on the number of flights that people are taking and how many incidents do not happen. Obviously, we don't report, oh, today another safe landing happened. But people, Americans, are scared and really looking for someone to blame, whether right or wrong. So what do you say when they're like, then whose problem is it that we're having all these incidents?
Well, it's, we're all stakeholders. So when we think about what is the problem is that we have to think of everything every day to say, if I'm a pilot, if I'm a captain, I'm on the flight deck, I have a goal in mind, and that is to, during my time, I flew for 26 and a half years, as captain for American Airlines, in addition to being an executive there. Every time I flew, I say my mission is to get, the 200 or whatever the number that I had on board safely from takeoff to landing, which included myself and the crew as well, right? I mean, that's what we do. So we all have a role. So when, here we have a little bit of the recency piece. By that I mean you see something bad happens, and then the next thing that happens, it's front of mind, right? Over the course. I'll put it in comparison. Contextually, on any given day, well, any given year, we have about 40,000 plus fatalities on our nation's highway. We don't think about it as one, and then we have an element, if we're the public, of control. This is a real opportunity for some of our best and brightest minds. So I look out and see, the Elon Musk of the world, or the Jeff Bezos, or Altman, and others, people who are doing generative AI. Is an opportunity for us to look around and say, what else can we be doing with technology, right? Technology has brought us a long way. Again, I look over the arc of my own career, from starting out at a helicopter, a little six-pack of instruments, nothing automated, right? So everything is manual. So you're engaged, your brain, your hands, your feet, it's all working, right? And you've got to do that in a way that keeps you safe every time you go out and fly a mission. Technology has brought us far. If you look back at some of the historical accidents that have happened, out of those came lessons learned. So today we have, the terrain awareness, collision avoidance. This is an opportunity for America, irregardless of what people might think, right? I commend the president, and I commend others to say, let's go out and build. America deserves. I mean, I use that term forcefully. America deserves the best airspace system in the world, bar none.
I gotta say, my friends, I'm sure your friends, your family have said things like, listen, I'm not flying. I don't know why you're going. I can go on a quick flight. And this is what I'm hearing. And I know that you are a consummate professional. And so you're telling us what we need to understand. But, person to person, what are you telling people that are looking to, like, really, are we okay? Should I still get on a flight? People are really scared right now.
Our system is layers, right? So we have layers of safety. It doesn't depend on one thing. And so we talk about this, what we call this Swiss cheese model. So you got all these layers, and every now and then all the holes in those separate layers line up, and at the end, the outcome of that might be an incident, or God forbid, it could be an unfortunate accident, to include a fatal accident, right? So our goal is to go back and look at all of these layers, right? The system doesn't only depend on a controller, or doesn't only depend on a pilot, or a mechanic, or a flight attendant, or a dispatcher, or the airline's management system, right? It is all those layers working in concert and coordination. So to the extent that I breach one layer, I've got another layer of protection there.
Well, Billy Nolan, you restored some confidence for this world traveler inside of me. So I thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Lindsey, for having me on this morning.
So, who's getting you tight? This is my favorite part of the show, because we can just sort of air out our grievances, New York style, because that's where I'm from, and everybody makes fun of us because they say, we're always angry. So, who's getting me tight? Drum rolls, please. All of the online trolls who take the time out to take out of their lives and criticize Kodak Black. He's a rapper and artist, if you don't know. He attended President Trump's Black History Month celebration. You can say what you want about Snoop Dogg, who literally went on a tirade years before going to Trump's inauguration, telling anyone who goes to Trump's events that they're basically clowns. But Kodak Black is the exception to any rule you have for a Black entertainer aligning themselves with Trump. Trump literally commuted that man's sentence. He was in prison for making a false statement on a federal document related to a firearms purchase, according to the New York Times. And Trump gave him 2 years of his life back. I mean, freedom he wouldn't otherwise have. So why do you think he wouldn't attend a Black History Month event for Trump? Let's hear Kodak in his own words.
We could mix, or we could mix, and we could mingle amongst each other and shit. So imagine a world if all of us was just one color. If all of us was just blue or green. Oh, if everybody was smart, you gotta have some dumb people. Oh, what if everybody was rich? Who's gonna take the trash out?
whatever that means. I'll let you decide, but did you ever hear of live and let live? Some of y'all spend your whole day trying to condescend people into the correct behavior, and that's just subjective to your opinion of how you think they should behave. I mean, there are so many, literally, I could list them out, things to worry about. So really, you guys need to learn how to live and let live. I mean, what that man chooses to do is that man's choice. That's all I gotta say. Spend the rest of the week just chilling and worried about yourself. See you next week on Echo Chambers Unplugged.